Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a very critical and unfolding story that has captured the world's attention. The collapse of Israel's Loop Highway and the reported wave of new attacks from Iran, Egypt, and Qatar are reshaping the dynamics of conflict in the region. This is not just about a single incident of infrastructure damage or a single strike, but about a deeper struggle involving military tactics, political messaging, and international consequences. What we are witnessing is a new phase in the confrontation that has been escalating for months and years, now reaching a point where one event is tied to another in a cycle of retaliation and pressure. The Loop Highway, a major artery for Israel's civilian and military transport, has long been seen as both a lifeline and a potential target. Its collapse, whether caused by deliberate strikes, sabotage, or even structural vulnerabilities under stress, is symbolic of the vulnerability that even highly developed nations face during modern warfare. For Israel, the collapse is more than just a road issue. It disrupts supply lines, delays military movements, and shakes public confidence. For its adversaries, it sends a message that critical infrastructure is not untouchable, no matter how much technology and defense systems are put in place. Iran has been central to this escalation. Tehran has repeatedly signaled that it is ready to expand pressure against Israel, both directly and indirectly, using its network of alliances and proxies. The latest wave of attacks attributed to Iran involves not only missile launches, but also cyber elements and covert operations that target energy, communications, and transport systems. Iran's approach is multifaceted. It does not simply aim for immediate destruction, but for psychological and economic disruption, forcing Israel into a state of constant alertness. Egypt's role in this confrontation is particularly complex. Historically, Egypt has maintained peace accords with Israel, balancing between confrontation and cooperation. However, internal political pressures, economic struggles, and regional shifts have fueled a harder stance. Reports of Egyptian-backed groups participating in coordinated actions against Israeli assets show how quickly alliances can be reshaped when domestic anger and regional strategies align. Egypt, while not openly declaring war, appears to be testing the limits of Israel's tolerance by allowing or supporting forces that target its neighbor. Qatar, on the other hand, has emerged as a surprising factor in this conflict. Known for its soft power, media influence, and financial reach, Qatar has often played mediator in Middle Eastern disputes, yet recent reports suggest that Qatari support, whether financial or logistical, has been directed toward factions that challenge Israel's security. For Israel, this is a concerning development because it expands the circle of adversaries beyond its traditional rivals and deepens the sense of isolation it feels in the region. Qatar's involvement also complicates international diplomacy, as it maintains strong ties with Western nations while simultaneously aligning itself with actors who resist Israel. The collapse of the Loop Highway, when examined in this wider context, becomes a symbol of a broader strategic campaign. It is not just a physical road being destroyed. It represents the breaking down of confidence, mobility, and predictability. When people in Israel see images of their critical highways shattered, they feel vulnerable in ways that missile defense systems cannot fully address. This vulnerability is precisely what Israel's adversaries aim to exploit. From a military perspective, highways are more than civilian routes. They are essential for troop movements, the transport of heavy equipment, and the supply of essential goods. Losing access to one of the most significant highways means rerouting logistics, delaying responses, and increasing strain on alternative paths. This slows down Israel's ability to mobilize quickly during attacks and creates openings for its adversaries to launch further strikes. Iran, Egypt, and Qatar's combined pressure highlights the reality that Israel is facing a multi-front challenge. Unlike earlier conflicts that were mostly limited to one neighboring front, this situation combines threats from multiple directions, with different strategies being used simultaneously. Iran focuses on long-range and psychological warfare. Egypt leans on regional pressure and covert support. Qatar employs economic and diplomatic levers. This triangulation of pressure means that Israel cannot simply respond to one threat without being exposed to another. For civilians inside Israel, the psychological toll is immense. Hearing about missile threats is one thing. Seeing vital infrastructure collapse, watching fuel lines disrupted, and experiencing the daily struggle of uncertainty is another. Families traveling across the country now wonder whether the roads they drive on are safe. Farmers, truckers, and workers fear that their access to markets or workplaces may be cut off at any moment. The collapse of a road becomes a collapse of confidence in everyday life. Internationally, this development has sparked debates about escalation and de-escalation. Western allies of Israel, especially the United States and European powers, now face the dilemma of how far they are willing to go in supporting Israel without being drawn into a regional war. For Washington, this is particularly sensitive because of its ongoing negotiations with Iran over nuclear agreements and regional stability. The highway collapse is not just a local event, but a trigger that could shape global diplomatic calculations. Iran's strategy appears to hinge on exhausting Israel through attrition. Instead of launching one overwhelming attack, the idea is to create a steady stream of disruptions that cumulatively wear down Israel's resilience. Infrastructure strikes, combined with cyber intrusions and political isolation, make Israel appear vulnerable in ways that damage its deterrent image. Tehran's leadership believes that by exposing weaknesses, it can strengthen its negotiating position both regionally and internationally. Egypt's calculations are somewhat different. Cairo is under intense domestic pressure due to economic struggles and popular dissatisfaction. By appearing to take a tougher stance against Israel, Egypt's leadership seeks to redirect public frustration outward and strengthen its legitimacy. Yet, the risks for Egypt are high. An outright confrontation with Israel could spiral into a conflict that damages its economy further. This delicate balance means that Egypt is more likely to engage through indirect channels and covert support than through open warfare. Qatar's involvement adds another layer of unpredictability. As a nation that has built its image around global influence through diplomacy, sports, and media, Qatar's decision to align more openly with groups opposing Israel suggests a shift in its long-term strategy. It may see an opportunity to enhance its standing in the Arab and Islamic world by presenting itself as a supporter of resistance movements. But at the same time, Qatar risks jeopardizing its relationships with the United States and Europe, who view stability in the region as essential. The chain reaction sparked by the highway collapse is already visible. In Israel, emergency measures are being rolled out to repair infrastructure, reroute traffic, and secure vulnerable points. But every repair effort is under the shadow of potential new strikes. The constant pressure of repairing while preparing for more damage creates an exhausting cycle. For the military, this means not only defending against attacks, but also committing resources to rebuilding, which stretches the nation's capabilities. This situation also raises deeper questions about the nature of modern warfare. In the past, wars were often defined by battlefield clashes and territorial gains. Today, they are increasingly defined by the ability to disrupt an opponent's daily life and weaken its resilience without necessarily engaging in full-scale battles. By targeting roads, energy supplies, and communication systems, adversaries can inflict pain that spreads far beyond the immediate military arena. For Israel, the challenge is how to adapt. Its strength has always been its technological edge, intelligence capabilities, and rapid mobilization. But when highways collapse and attacks come from multiple directions, even advanced technology has limits. Israel must now rethink its strategies, strengthening not only its missile defenses, but also its infrastructure resilience. Protecting roads, bridges, and communication lines may become as important as protecting borders. The international community is watching closely. Allies fear that if this situation spirals further, it could ignite a regional conflict that draws in multiple nations and destabilizes energy markets. Already, oil prices have shown signs of fluctuation as fears of supply disruptions spread. European nations dependent on Middle Eastern energy are especially concerned. The United States, balancing its commitments in Ukraine, Asia, and the Middle East, now faces the possibility of having to deepen its involvement once again in a region it had hoped to scale back from. At the same time, adversaries of Israel are emboldened. The symbolic victory of bringing down a major Israeli highway has energized groups across the region who see it as proof that Israel is not invincible. This emboldening effect is dangerous because it may inspire further attacks, creating a chain of escalation that becomes difficult to stop. Inside Israel, political debates are intensifying. Opposition parties criticize the government for failing to prevent such infrastructure collapses, while the ruling leadership defends its actions as part of a larger struggle that requires patience and resilience. The political divide may widen as civilians demand answers and assurances about their safety. The collapse of the Loop Highway is also a test of unity. In times of crisis, nations often face internal divisions that can either weaken or strengthen their resolve. Israel must now navigate not only external attacks, but also the internal challenge of maintaining public trust and unity. If citizens lose confidence in their leaders or feel abandoned, the social fabric could weaken just when external pressures are at their highest. Globally, this situation raises questions about the future of conflict management. Can diplomacy keep pace with the realities of hybrid warfare, where attacks are physical, digital, psychological, and economic all at once? Can infrastructure be protected in an era where adversaries target the very lifelines of modern societies? These are questions that extend beyond Israel and apply to nations around the world. As this conflict unfolds, one thing is clear: the collapse of the Loop Highway is not an isolated event. It is part of a coordinated wave of pressure involving multiple nations and strategies. It is both a literal and symbolic blow to Israel's security and confidence. The road to recovery, both physically and strategically, will be long and uncertain. Israel's response will shape not only its immediate security, but also its future standing in the region. If it manages to adapt, rebuild, and deter further attacks, it may emerge stronger. But if the cycle of disruption continues, the pressure could reshape its politics, economy, and regional role in ways that few had anticipated. This is the critical moment we find ourselves in, a moment where infrastructure collapse, regional alliances, and global politics intersect in a complex and dangerous way. The outcome of this unfolding crisis will not only determine Israel's future, but also influence the direction of the entire Middle East.